Thank you. Once a friend of mine decided to pay me a compliment, and she said, you remind me of Data from Star Trek. And I asked her, well, how do you mean? I don't get it. Oh, well, he's a computer, but he's trying to be human. No, really, I mean it as a compliment. And now this got me thinking profound thoughts like, why couldn't she have picked a cooler android, like from Blade Runner or Aliens or something? Anyway, be that as it may, I am, as are all of us here, a child of technology. And in my case, as I'm actually a classical musician, I'm a classical pianist, and I play music that's a couple hundred years old, so I actually feel like an atavist, like in a way I don't belong here, and it doesn't really make sense. And I'm always trying to reconcile these two parts of myself and also of really of the world that we live in general. And I think if we trace back the history of humanity, we are a species that creates tools. To a very large extent, the history of humanity is the history of technology. Who recognizes that clip? Okay, only a handful of people. Everybody else, go see Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is actually the moment at which the first these pre-humans, these early hominids, discovered the first tool or invented the first tool, a hammer. And this was about 2.4 million years ago. And I'm always looking then to reconcile technology and art and humanity, right? And I discovered something pretty interesting. If you look at the very term technology, it comes from the Greek techne, which actually means art or craft. It's about making something. So maybe these two seeming polar opposites aren't necessarily opposites after all. And if you extend that further, think about this from an artistic perspective. All artistic media are technologies. We understand that film is a technology, right? We have these fancy high-tech cameras that can record things, even if we take that for granted nowadays. But what about this? Does anybody recognize this? Nobody? Okay, this is from the south of France, Lascaux. This is a cave painting, about 17,000 years old. So pretty extraordinary, but this is also a technology. This is one of the early examples, right? And now, actually, I lied. This is not from Lascaux. This is from Lascaux 2. If you actually go visit the cave, apparently with too many people visiting it, it damaged the paintings, and the paintings started to fade. So they actually, on the other side of the mountain, they actually duplicated Lascaux, and people painstakingly recreated each of these paintings inch by inch. It's pretty extraordinary. So support living artists, visit Lascaux. But I've always been fascinated by even the simplest of technologies, right? And I think of a time, actually I was watching television once with my college girlfriend, and I was transfixed by it as if I had never seen a TV before. And she pointed to the screen and said, "Look, moving pictures in a box." But I've always been then fascinated by technology in general, and we shouldn't forget that even the simplest of technologies is actually a very extraordinary thing. We tend to think nowadays, we think of luxury as, for example, the big houses or fancy cars or expensive vacations or whatever. But I have a different definition. And my definition of luxury is if you can press a button and make anything happen, then that it is an unbelievable luxury. Not everybody has that, and we didn't have that in the history of our species until only a few generations ago. And that's something that we should not take for granted. But what then is the purpose of technology? There seems to be a consensus on this one. Everybody tends to say, oh, well, the purpose is to make our lives easier. And I actually want to challenge that a little bit, because if we extend technology out into the future and look at where it's all headed, then it raises a few questions. And one of the questions is this: do we always want our lives to be easy? Is that the goal of humanity? Is that the goal of our species, our society? I'm not sure about that. On the other hand, with progress in technology, clearly we don't want technology to make our lives any harder. Does nobody get this? Okay, a few people. Inside joke. This, way back in 1931, the British author Aldous Huxley wrote a very famous novel, one of the most famous novels of the past century, Brave New World. And how many people have read it? Okay, a handful of people. All the people in the front row have read it. So strange. You're the same people who saw 2001. Okay, everybody. But what does Huxley do in this novel? He depicts a future society that's supposed to be some kind of utopia. And how is it a utopia? This pill that you see, he calls in the novel Soma, and it's the happy pill. And all you have to do is just swallow the pill, and you're on cloud 9. You're nice and happy. And yet what's interesting about this is Huxley's utopia is actually simultaneously a dystopia. That's the extraordinary thing about this view of the future that he paints. And why is that? Why should that be the case? And I have a couple reasons, right? One is that there's a price that we pay for convenience. There's a price that we pay for the incredible luxuries that we get to enjoy in the modern world. Humanity, like our species, has created tools for which nature did not provide us. So we've been able, for example, to conquer the seas and even the skies, even outer space. And what we're doing now is we're demanding of technology tasks for which nature did provide us. Now, again, I'm a child of technology. I'm a strong advocate of technology. I love technology. So I'm not a Luddite by any means, although I'm either proud or ashamed to say that I still don't own a smartphone. I was waiting for the new iPhone. But what happens here is there's a trend in technology, and the trend is always towards less human skill. There's always a trade-off. And way back in 1841, the great American author and philosopher Emerson wrote this wonderful quote from his essay called Self-Reliance. Society never advances. It recedes as fast on one side as it gains on the other. For everything that is given, something is taken. And then later on, in this same essay, he goes on and says, the civilized man has built a coach, but has lost the use of his feet. He is supported on crutches, but lacks so much support of muscle. He has a fine Geneva watch, but he fails of the skill to tell the hour by the sun. His notebooks impair his memory, his libraries overload his wit. And he goes on to give other fascinating examples. Now, I would like to use as examples two of modern humanity's favorite technologies, probably the big two. I'm sure everybody in this room could guess what they are. Okay, that's one. That's very good. Okay, cars and computers. Exactly. I love both technologies. I think that they're both amazing. This trend towards less human skill, you could look at it in each of these, actually. So in the car, we've had this transition from manually shifting gears, which is a skill that you have to learn, and we've moved from that to automatic, to now we're moving to electric cars, which don't have any gears. It's actually fascinating technology, the way that works. You don't need the gears. Instant torque, incredible. And now we're even moving towards self-driving cars, which in the US have already been approved legally in a couple states. So this is then the trend towards less human skill. Now, if you look at computers, it becomes quite interesting. I grew up, I was the first personal computer generation, and now I know there are a lot of younger people in the audience who just won't know what I'm talking about, and this is why I want to introduce it to you. I got my first computer when I was 7 years old, and it was the Timex Sinclair 1000, and this is it, and it had 2 kilobytes of RAM, not megabytes, not gigabytes, not terabytes, whatever, 2 kilobytes, right? And then I had to get like this 16 kilobyte expansion pack so I could play some primitive form of chess on it. I was a total geek, I still am. I can't hide that. So at the time, when you turned on a computer, you didn't get this. Imagine, there were computers with no graphics. You didn't get this, you got something more like this. This is a different computer if you remember this. And the system is ready, you get a blinking cursor, and then you had to type in commands like this. You actually had to program. It was the only way to interact with the first personal computers. You didn't have stuff to click on. There was no mouse. It hadn't been invented yet. You didn't even have color yet. And if you wanted to do anything with a computer, you had to learn how to program it yourself. And this was actually fascinating. Nowadays, we tend to think, we're trying to make everything as easy to use as possible, which of course we should. But nowadays we tend to think, oh, I was able to center my headline in Microsoft Word, and therefore I have spectacular computer skills or something, right? And anyway, I won't criticize Word. So what is the result then of this trend towards less human skill? What happens? Well, here's what happens. As a result, you get a stratified society. You get a class of knowers, a class of people who know, who actually make this stuff. They're like the high priests. And then everybody else is a consumer. And to us, it just seems like magic. And that's one of the things that happens, right? Now, there's something more that I wish to address in this talk, and that is this. My belief is that technology can help us to meet our material needs, but I question the extent to which it can help us meet our emotional needs, at least not long term. We human beings, we need growth for happiness. This is something that psychology teaches us, right? We need to get better at something. And if we're always outsourcing everything to machines, then we're missing something. We're missing out, right? We miss that pride. We miss that self-esteem. And we can't outsource growth. Machines can never achieve something for us. And if that were the case, then somebody could have just invented some superhuman machine to swim from Cuba to Florida, right? Oh, actually some superhuman machine did swim from Cuba to Florida. Anyway, that was 63-year-old technology, by the way. Astonishing. So we want to draw a distinction then between technology that simply does work for us and technology that helps us get better. So there's technology that replaces human skill versus technology that helps us build more skills. And that's what interests me more. I'll give 3 simple examples. One is because I'm a geek, chess software I find fascinating. This was my first chess program, actually, when I was a little kid. And nowadays, I mean, think about the astonishing leap that we've had technologically. In order to learn chess, in the past, you had these physical pieces on the board and you had to move them, whatever. It took a lot of time just to set up the board. And nowadays, you could flip instantaneously from one chess puzzle to the next, to the next, to the next, etc. And you don't have to reset up the board. So people can learn faster. It's an amazing use of technology. There's an incredible mobile software for this right now. Another simple example, I'm a big fan, also this quantified self movement. I have a cool sports watch and a GPS watch that tracks me when I run or swim or whatever, and it can measure everything. This helps me train. This is an amazing use of technology. And a third example is, since I'm a musician and an educator, we're using this, in my company now, we're using this concept in music education. So we're teaching computers to teach people music. And there's software out there that composes music for us, where literally you just press a button and then it's all done. But it's fascinating to me from a technological point of view, but from the aspect of human skill, it's a lot less interesting to me. So we're really concentrating on teaching technology to teach people to increase their skills. So what is the future then of technology? Where is it all headed, right? Maybe some of you have heard of singularity, right? Where if you extend Moore's law, don't have time to explain that, but if you extend this out into the future, into the relatively near future, within a couple of decades, it's predicted that computers will be billions of times smarter than humans. It's also predicted that we'll have robots swimming in our bloodstreams, literally downloading the latest antivirus definitions from the internet. Cloud computing, some people predict, will largely replace thought, like our brains will be wired to Google or whatever it takes its place, etc. But what can we conclude from all of this? And my conclusion is this: humanity will always need to grow. We will always need to meet our emotional needs. And we could always admire the achievements of others, be they technological, be they artistic, or in any other endeavor. And I think that we should always seek to leverage technology for our own growth, and that's what really leads to our happiness. Thank you.